Right, guys, listen to this. Let me read out some stats for you. Top 7% across Europe for tackles per 90 with 3.12. Top 1% for blocks at 1.61. Top 3% for aerials, 2.87. Top 1% again for blocks, 2.24 per 90. This is across the top 5 leagues in Europe. Can you guess who we're talking about? Of course you can guess. You saw the title in the video. Casemiro. He's really good, isn't he? Isn't he, Dan?
He's not bad.
Would you take him? I think we'd all take him. But how good has he been, and what has been the Casemiro effect? Hugh, you were at the Carabao Cup final. I was there. I was getting there. You were at the Carabao Cup final. I watched it on telly, and I was blown away by him. What was it like to see him there live and the impact that he had on that game?
Yeah, I've seen him quite a few times live so far this season, and he is an absolutely fantastic player who was so strange that people were saying, has he still got it? Maybe that's because I think he was not pigeonholed, but you're looking at Modric and Kroos at Real Madrid and their ages and the question marks over whether they can still do it. And I think he was almost taken into that category despite the fact that he's like at least 5 years younger, right? It's like, and he's still got a lot to offer. Footballers are going on longer and longer. He had at the time he moved to Man United only just turned 30. It's like he has a lot to offer. And then the other thing, I think, people saw the style of play, between Modric and Kroos, the possession that they had, and thought, oh, this guy's just the ball winner. He's the water carrier in midfield. He maybe doesn't have the quality that they do. And that has been the best thing about watching him on Sunday, his ability to exhibit so many different aspects of the game. He's determined in the challenge. He is a very good passer, which I guess we didn't see that range as much unless we watch the Liga regularly. But I mean, in this country, we didn't see that as often. And then, of course, he's getting goals. He's getting forward at times. He's basically running the midfield box to box, which has been incredible to see. And I think one of the big things in terms of how Manchester United play, we had sat for quite a long time with 2 holding midfielders, nowhere near his quality. But ultimately, his quality allows us now to play a single holder, and that's what we saw on Sunday. And it has allowed the likes of Fred, oh my word, Fred, to get forward, get goals, get assists. He frees up the rest of the team completely because in his area of the pitch, there is just so much confidence that he'll be able to win the ball back, and we will be able to start attacks. And even the likes of Marcus Rashford, all of that comes from his area of the pitch, because most teams are stopped in that area of the pitch now. They're unable to turn Manchester United like they used to, expose central defensive players, maybe without speed, naming no names, like Manchester United have been exposed in previous seasons. So his quality is just, he's right up there in terms of the best signings in the Premier League, certainly, from last summer.
I wanted to start with those numbers because it is about the basic numbers of it at times. And when you talk about that single pivot, the ability to have another player higher up the pitch, another attacking player higher up the pitch, the effect of that then leads to Rashford being able to be higher up the pitch as well. We've seen in previous seasons him sort of having to come back, work with Luke Shaw, or Man United having to really play on the counter-attack with no sort of through ball prior to that. You've seen Bruno Fernandes play in a different role, but a role that now suits the team. Eriksen he's averaging 6.3 progressive passes per 90, which is really good. And again, that's down to the fact that, for me, the thing I see about him, and it's really blown me away, and the Real Madrid point is really important, but that's a team player that goes, because if you have another player who's trying to be on the ball all the time, you're slowing it down, and then you've got yourselves a problem. So he was obviously a team player and a winner from day one, and wanted just to get that done. But to come to Man United to show his passing range, in terms of the Man United team, he's second when it comes to passes into the final third as well. So he's brilliant with the ball. But the thing for me is the defensive awareness and the force field that allows for all those other players, because they kind of don't bother coming back sometimes, some of those guys. They'll stay that little bit higher up. I saw a moment where there was so you wouldn't have seen this, of course, but on telly, Sabitza's sort of in his position, and there's this focus pull from him being in focus to Casemiro, and Sabitza sort of turns to him and goes, "Do you want me to come back?" And Casemiro goes, "You just stay up there." And you saw it with Brazil as well, with Paquetá. There was a moment when I was out in Qatar, you saw him go, "Forget this, right, I'll sit here, off you go, you do that." it's amazing the change it's made, and I think it's changing the way we're looking at Man United now, because like you say, with the players like Fred and a lot of players were there last year. There were players that we said were, that squad was rotten, the dressing room was rotten. He's really provided a glue that's taken him to another level this year, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a transformative signing. We should have known better, really, because if you put a world-class midfielder into a cohesive system, it's probably going to work, isn't it? And that's what Manchester United have got now. They've got a manager with a plan. He knows what he wants to do. It's working with everyone. Every player's improved. But Casemiro's been a huge part of that.
The one thing I'll say, Dan, is I don't think we knew he could elevate his game so much more and have... No, because sure. I think there was that... he's fortunate to be at a Real Madrid team that had those two players who could have dealt with that part of the game. So for him to come up, he's gone up a level, hasn't he? He's spread his wings a little bit. I
think it's a case of what Hugh says, of when you've got Modric and Kroos in front of you, who are two of the best distributors in world football, two of the best distributors there's ever been. You're going to give them the ball, which is what his job was. I think he's so good in his position, but he's also offering those other things now. He knows when to go himself as well and arrive late in the penalty area and be a threat. And like you say about the communication, if Sabitzer, Fred, whoever, if he's going, one of them will sit back in, because they all know their jobs at Manchester United now. And he has just completely transformed that whole side. He does things that we didn't know he was capable of. But it is the basics of a defensive midfielder. If you look at Liverpool at the moment, they're falling down in many areas. But one of the main reasons for me is that Fabinho's form has fallen off a cliff. Now, when Liverpool were good and thriving, how good was Fabinho? He was excellent. He was doing a lot of the things you want a defensive midfielder to do. Suddenly, he's not on form. Liverpool are falling down. As I say, there's other reasons for that as well. But Fabinho's form is one of those. Casemiro comes in. Manchester United fans have been saying for years, we need a defensive midfielder. We need a defensive midfielder. At least 3 seasons, they've been saying that. Finally, they've got one in. And look what it's done to them. Obviously, the manager has made a huge difference as well. But he has been some signing. At the moment, I don't know, he's not just the best defensive midfielder in the Premier League. He's the best defensive midfielder in the world.
I think his maturity is actually really important, because he gives other people a platform to play. I think one of the things, comparing his time at Real Madrid, I do think he's come to Manchester United and he's like, wow, okay, I do need to do just about everything in this midfield. Not every single job, but I need to express every part of my game for us to maximise our output as a team.
Yeah.
So I do need to be on the ball more. I do probably need to cover more ground. I do need to be more communicative. We have dragged all of those things out of him because the team needed so much from him ultimately. But I also think in terms of, a lot of people saying, you mentioned the word, winner earlier, screaming out for their team to sign a winner. What do they mean? This is what they mean. This is the kind of character they mean, because he's harnessing the atmosphere inside Old Trafford. He can send the messaging out to the fans, and he has done since the moment he got there, by the way. It's like, I'm not coming to Manchester United to just be an also-ran. We're here to win things. This is Manchester United. I've come to one of the biggest clubs in the world, and we always have that rhetoric when it comes to Manchester United. But the fact is, he's deadly serious about that, and you could tell with the way that he lifted the trophy at the weekend, what it meant to him and what it means, I think, going on from here for Manchester United, that if they can add a few more characters like that, they are going to go places. Because, from my perspective, just to see the uplift in form, not necessarily form, but I think it's kind of comfort that the players now play with.
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's about feeling valuable.
Yeah.
And I think I'm seeing that across the league. When we talk about Chelsea and their struggles, being valuable doesn't mean feeling valuable. And I think Rashford's a great example of that as well. He's important. He knows he's important.
Yeah. And
so he elevates his performances. And I think the same comes with Casemiro. And you're right, the leadership of some of the players that they brought in. Martinez as well, great example of that tenacity and that almost the calmness of being a winner as well. When you talk about the maturity, aggression, certainly with Martinez. The final thing defensively, I think, that sets him apart for me is I call it sort of like I'll get it way of playing. Like watching that Newcastle game, the amount of times he goes over to double up, which is his job, but he's sort of, I'll do it. Or like there's a clearance, it's sort of like, I'll get it. He's just always in the right place at the right time defensively. And that allows Man United to not concede goals, stay in games, and again, provide that starting point to be winning games, because you only need one goal or two goals to win it.
But he's been the end point as well. He scored some important goals for Manchester United so far this season.
And he's always done that, hasn't he? He's always stepped up and scored big
goals. Not more so than the weekend.
You spoke about Fabinho. He doesn't make it into this next question, which has kind of been doing the rounds for quite some time. So I think it's a good one to address here on the Football Forecast. Casemiro, Rodri, Partey. I mean, that's the one thing that these guys have done. They've made defensive midfield cool again, which is great. Lee Catamol will be sort of tipping the hat to them right now. So Casemiro's stats: 2 goals, 3 assists, 3.2 tackles per 90, 1.3 interceptions per 90. He's better in both those metrics. Rodri's got more assists. He's got 2 goals, 4 assists this year. His passing accuracy is right up there. Casemiro's 79% pass accuracy. Rodri's is 91%. And 1.2 key passes per 90 as well. And Partey's got 2 goals, both from outside the box, I think, as well. No assists so far. 2.2 tackles per 90, 1.1 interceptions, 87% pass accuracy. He's kind of in the middle of those 3. You know what I'm going to ask? The big question, of course, is out of those 3, who are you taking for your team if it's a game to save the planet? Who is your CDM?
Casemiro. He's been there and done it, hasn't he? He's won pretty much everything in his career. He's won the big ones in club football, so it would have to be him. But I think it's a bit of a boring answer. But the 3 players that you've just mentioned, they're all exactly what their club needs. So Rodri suits Manchester City perfectly. Partey, when he's not there for Arsenal, you really notice it. He suits it. And Casemiro for Manchester United, again, when he's not there.
Could they all be just as good in each other's teams?
Well, that's the way that I was looking at it. I've come to the same answer. It's Casemiro. But actually, I thought, does Partey take Casemiro's place and improve Manchester United? Does Rodri take Casemiro's place and improve Manchester United? I don't think either of them do. And I think there's a good case that Casemiro would improve Manchester City's midfield instead of Rodri, and he'd improve Arsenal's. But that's not saying that any of them are bad players or that they're having a bad season. They've all been very good. And I think, Partey's likely to win a title. So
I do wonder with Rodri, is Rodri going through his Casemiro Real Madrid phase, where he's kind of he could be at that level, but we just haven't seen it yet because he's been playing for such a dominant side.
The way City play as well, he has to drop back into a back 3 quite a lot. The full-backs are all over the place for Manchester City. Rodri's so often dropping back and kind of playing as a defender. But
you can't give the ball to the opposition that often and allow them to score goals. So Rodri, unfortunately,
fair enough.
He's got a big black mark for this season.
His passing accuracy is much higher. He does probably have the ball a little bit more. I would go Casemiro as well. I think it's all those intangibles that you're talking about. And I think overall, that Man United side is surprising us. And he's kind of a huge, as a few players, I think a spine strong, but he's so important in allowing that team to surprise us, both from a mental point of view, but also, in terms of putting out fires and stuff like that. Final thing on this, I think it is interesting. When you talk about those crucial, defensive midfielders for teams being able to sort of get them to be great. Claude Makelele, Xavi Alonso, Michael Essien, Patrick Vieira, Gilberto Silva, Fernandinho, Kante, Roy Keane. 2 things with this. Is Casemiro got enough? Has he been brilliant enough to take Man United to even higher heights in terms of this season, in terms of getting anywhere near the title race? Because they're not a million miles off. And secondly, is there something in having a guy who's a little bit older in that midfield just to keep it calm and ticking over?
Well, yeah. I mean, to answer the second point, there is, because you have a responsibility to, especially if there are younger or inexperienced players in the side, to control the positioning on the pitch. You have that ability as a central midfielder to say, I want you here, I want you there. Okay, you got a centre back saying that same thing to you, but then you're passing it on further up the pitch, and obviously you have the ability to control everything around you. But ultimately, for someone like Casemiro in Manchester United squad, it boils down to that experience. Why would you sign a player who's won 5 Champions League titles? Why would you sign someone with all of those international caps? Well, to offer that, it's not just going to be what you do on the pitch. It's also going to be what you're doing in training, in terms of the messaging for other players, and of course in the changing room as well. And he just has it. Casemiro just has it. Whatever it is, whatever that intangible thing is, he has it, because he's already galvanised the squad. He's galvanised the fans. He's got that rapport with them already. You see the way he goes to the corner, celebrates goals. He seems to love being at Manchester United. The fans absolutely adore him already. It's a match made in heaven.
I think it's so bizarre that we spent the whole summer thinking Manchester United were going to get De Jong, and then on the last few days they're swooping to get Casemiro. But he's a better signing. He suits what they need at this point. Now, De Jong may well end up at Manchester United at some point, or a player of that ilk may. But for this point in time now, Casemiro was just the perfect signing, and Manchester United are on the right track now. So he's going to be an important player for the next 5 years, because he's not just going to completely fall off a cliff when he gets to 35. You can have 5 years of one of the best DMs that there is, and Manchester United are going to be bringing in players around him. The future's bright for them now.
That's the thing. He may well, when we look back in 10 years' time, say, what was the signing that catapulted Manchester United back to being the Manchester United that we knew from the previous 25 years? It looks like it could be him.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.